Ladies and gentlemen, in today's world, privacy has become a highly contested battleground. We live in an age of unprecedented connectivity, where we are encouraged to share more about ourselves than ever before. But as the digital landscape evolves, it becomes all the more critical to recognize what should remain private. Today, I want to talk about 5 things that should remain sacred and untouched by the public eye in 2025. First, your personal identity. The core of who you are is not meant to be a spectacle. Your identity is built from a lifetime of experiences, thoughts, and beliefs that are uniquely yours. In a time when the social media sphere thrives on snapshots of our lives, it becomes all too easy to forget that our very essence is not a commodity to be sold or traded for likes and followers. Guard it as you would a precious artifact. Your sense of self, your internal compass, should never be reduced to a soundbite. Second, your digital footprint. In an era where everything you do is logged and tracked, it is imperative to recognize that nothing truly disappears from the digital world. Every search, every post, every photo, and every interaction you have online is a record. So ask yourself, what do you want your digital legacy to be? How much of your life are you willing to surrender to the data-hungry machines that now define the fabric of our digital experience? Be deliberate with what you expose and mindful of what you withhold. Third, your emotional vulnerability. We all face struggles, doubts, and moments of weakness. But just because these moments are part of the human condition doesn't mean they need to be shared with the world. There is power in vulnerability, but there is also danger. Not everyone is equipped to handle the rawness of your emotions, and when shared indiscriminately, they can be misused or misunderstood. And so I say this again. Share your emotional vulnerability. Not everyone is equipped to handle the rawness of your emotions, and when shared indiscriminately, they can be misused or misunderstood. Protect your emotional well-being by setting boundaries around who you open up to and under what circumstances. Fourth, your family and personal relationships. Relationships are the bedrock of our existence. The people closest to you, your partner, your children, your parents, should remain outside the public eye. The pressures of social validation and online scrutiny can seep into the most sacred of bonds, distorting the reality of what those relationships are truly about. There is no need to advertise the love, struggles, or conflicts that are meant to be private. Keep your most intimate connections safe from external judgment and the endless noise of the digital world. The power of self-control. In an age where everything feels urgent, where the temptation to overshare is constant, the ability to withhold information becomes an act of strength. Your ability to maintain boundaries, to keep certain aspects of your life for yourself, is not a sign of secrecy or isolation. Rather, it is a profound assertion of self-respect. Friend Mother Margaret Burns, in the very inspired mood, the words secrecy or isolation. Control over your personal narrative is one of the last remaining ways to maintain agency in a world that increasingly seeks to pry into every corner of our existence, and therefore almost invariably requires preservation of that agency. But unlike terrorism, which kills sustainably, the world of 2025 is one where the concept of privacy is in jeopardy, and the line between the public and the private is becoming increasingly blurred. But this does not mean we must abandon privacy altogether. We must fiercely protect these aspects of our lives: our identity, our digital presence, our emotional world, our personal relationships, and our ability to exercise control. These are the pillars that hold up our sense of self and our place in the world. And if we are to navigate this new reality with integrity and strength, it is imperative that we understand the power in what we choose to keep private. In today's hyper-connected world, the value of privacy cannot be overstated. Privacy is often misunderstood as a mere shield against others knowing our secrets, but it's far more than that. It is the foundation of our autonomy, our ability to exist as independent, self-determined individuals. When you choose what to share and when to withhold, you are asserting control over your own narrative, maintaining ownership over your life. This act of control is not just an exercise in restraint, but a powerful declaration that your experiences, your thoughts, and your very essence are yours to protect. Privacy is not about evading connection or retreating into isolation, quite the opposite. By maintaining certain boundaries, we preserve the quality of our relationships. We are able to engage with others in a way that is intentional and meaningful, rather than in a reactionary or performative manner. In an age where it seems that every aspect of our lives can be streamed and shared in real time, it is crucial to remember that some moments are too sacred, too personal, to be turned into content for external consumption. Privacy is an expression of self-respect. It allows us to develop and define our internal landscape without external interference. Think of the complexity and depth of your inner thoughts, the evolving nature of your beliefs, and the space needed to process your emotions. When you protect your privacy, you give yourself the room to grow, to reflect, and to evolve without being shaped by the opinions and expectations of others. It's a space where you can be unconditionally authentic, without the pressure of constantly performing for an audience, and it allows for the quiet, thoughtful development of the person you choose to become. It is also a fundamental aspect of mental well-being. Privacy serves as a buffer against the overwhelming flood of outside influences. The digital age, for all its conveniences, has made it increasingly difficult to escape constant scrutiny and judgment. We are encouraged to present curated versions of ourselves, to engage in endless validation-seeking behavior. But the more we allow ourselves to be subject to this digital gaze, the more we risk losing touch with our true selves. Privacy offers us the mental space to find clarity, to heal, and to protect our emotional equilibrium. The value of privacy lies in the freedom it provides. It enables us to protect the delicate boundaries between the public and the private, allowing us to maintain a sense of independence in a world that is increasingly interconnected. It is the safeguard of our dignity and autonomy, two things we should never take for granted. As the lines between public and private life continue to blur, personal identity is the essence of who we are. It is the intricate blend of our thoughts, values, experiences, and memories that defines us as individuals. It is the internal compass that guides our choices, the lens through which we view the world, and the way we interact with others. In a time where external pressures and societal expectations continuously shape the narrative of who we should be, it becomes even more essential to protect and preserve the integrity of this inner self. At its core, personal identity is shaped by a multitude of factors: family, culture, experiences, and the choices we make over time. It is a dynamic and evolving process as we continuously reflect on our past, confront our present circumstances, and chart a path for the future. However, the very nature of our identity means that it cannot be reduced to a simple label or image, and it should never be exposed to the whims of others. It is far too complex and rich to be encapsulated in a profile, a snapshot, or a series of posts. When we allow our identity to be commodified or shaped by external forces, we risk losing sight of who we truly are, substituting a fabricated version of ourselves in place of the authentic self. Our personal identity is also deeply tied to our beliefs, values, and the ideas we hold dear. These are the foundations that determine how we act, who we trust, and what we aspire to achieve. These aspects of ourselves should not be treated as something to be manipulated or molded for the sake of external approval. When our deepest values are exposed to constant scrutiny or critique, the very essence of who we are becomes vulnerable to distortion. It is critical to preserve the sanctity of these beliefs, to hold them close to us, and protect them from becoming part of the public spectacle. This takes time. Equally important is the role that personal identity plays in our relationships with others. We build relationships not just based on the roles we occupy, but on the depth of our unique individuality. When we present a curated, shallow version of ourselves to the world, we diminish the capacity for true connection. Authentic relationships are built on the foundation of mutual respect for each other's individuality, and this can only exist when we maintain the privacy of our inner selves. By protecting our personal identity, we not only safeguard our autonomy, but also preserve the integrity of the relationships that matter most. Personal identity is inherently tied to our sense of purpose. It is what drives us to pursue goals, to engage in meaningful work, and to seek out the experiences that align with our true selves. When we are constantly subject to external judgment or the ever-present need for external validation, our sense of purpose becomes diluted, fragmented. We lose sight of our authentic desires and begin to chase after fleeting trends or societal expectations. To live authentically, we must retain the power to decide what shapes our sense of purpose and meaning. In a world that increasingly encourages self-exposure, it is essential to recognize the importance of privacy in safeguarding our personal identity. Our individuality is not something that should be constantly on display, nor is it something that should be exploited for the sake of entertainment, profit, or fleeting fame. It is something to be cherished and protected, for it is at the heart of everything we do. By protecting our personal identity, we preserve our autonomy, our capacity for genuine connection, and our ability to live an authentic, purposeful life. In the modern age, our digital footprint is an ever-expanding record of our online activities, a silent archive of everything we engage with, from social media interactions to the websites we visit and the data we share. This digital presence, although often unnoticed or dismissed as insignificant, carries profound implications for our lives. It is a permanent marker of who we are, what we care about, and how we interact with the world. And once it is out there, it is nearly impossible to erase. The digital footprint we leave behind, whether intentional or accidental, shapes not only how others perceive us, but also how we perceive ourselves. Our online actions have become a reflection of our identities, and in many cases, they can overshadow our real-world presence. Think about the information you have freely shared, the conversations you've had online, or even the photos you've posted. So, in an age where algorithms track our every click and analyze our every search, our digital actions are being continuously scrutinized, often in ways we are unaware of. That data can be used to shape everything from advertisements to political influence, influencing decisions we may never consciously acknowledge. And still, furthermore, the permanence of the digital world creates an inherent tension between who we are in the moment and the lasting trail of actions we leave behind. A single tweet, a shared image, or a comment made in passing can be captured and revisited years down the line, often divorced from the context in which it was originally created. This creates a paradox where our digital selves may be frozen in time, subject to external interpretation long after we have moved on or evolved from the person we were at that moment. Our past digital actions, mistakes, or shifts in belief may follow us, even as we change and grow in the present. This is a danger we must constantly recognize. What we expose today can become a legacy that defines us, whether we like it or not. The rise of artificial intelligence and predictive algorithms only amplifies this issue. As we engage with more devices and platforms, these systems begin to predict our behavior, desires, and needs, shaping what we see, hear, and even think. Our digital footprints are not merely records of our past, they are shaping our future. And with the exponential growth of data collection, it becomes more difficult to even comprehend the full scope of our digital presence. What we once saw as trivial interactions are now part of a much larger system of data-driven influence that extends far beyond our immediate control, particularly in the case of something like our little podcast, which appears, of course, to be so major a factor in establishing the global movement. The implications of this are not only personal, but social as well. The digital world creates an environment in which our behavior can be scrutinized, judged, and often manipulated in ways that were unimaginable just a few decades ago. It invites a kind of vulnerability that we have yet to fully understand. And with this comes a moral responsibility to be mindful of what we share, to recognize the value of our privacy, and to respect the digital boundaries of others. We must begin to take the idea of our digital footprint seriously, acknowledging that everything we leave behind online is part of an ongoing narrative, one that may be difficult to revise once it's set in motion. In a world where our lives are increasingly defined by digital interactions, protecting this footprint requires active effort. We must choose what to expose and what to withhold carefully, because in the digital age, your footprint will follow you long after you've forgotten the moment you left it. Emotional vulnerability is one of the most delicate and significant aspects of our lives, yet it is often treated with discomfort or disregard in a world that values strength, stoicism, and emotional control. Vulnerability, particularly when it comes to our emotions, is a profound expression of our humanity. It is where our rawest, most authentic selves reside. Yet, in a society that often encourages us to present a polished, curated version of who we are, the act of revealing our emotional vulnerabilities can feel like an invitation for judgment or exploitation. When we expose our emotions, we are giving others access to our inner world, our fears, our desires, and our deepest anxieties. This is inherently risky, for emotions are complex and they often evolve over time. They are not always fully understood, even by us. To show vulnerability is to allow others the chance to witness the aspects of ourselves that are in flux or still unraveling. We become transparent in a way that can feel uncomfortably exposing, and the fear of being misunderstood or ridiculed can make it difficult to embrace vulnerability. However, this openness is also where the possibility for profound connection lies, as sharing our emotional experiences often deepens our relationships and fosters a sense of empathy and understanding. Especially in cases like today's one, where it is ominously clear that it is not in the best interests of the other. Yet not everyone is capable of handling emotional vulnerability with the respect and care it deserves. The more we share, the more we expose ourselves to the potential of being dismissed, misinterpreted, or even manipulated. It is crucial, therefore, to discern who is worthy of witnessing our vulnerability. Not everyone around us is emotionally equipped to support us when we are at our most vulnerable. And being exposed to the wrong people can lead to emotional harm. In the same way that we would not hand over the keys to our home to a stranger, we must be discerning in choosing who we allow access to our emotional world. When we open up too freely, we risk not only feeling emotionally overwhelmed, but also losing control of our narrative, allowing others to define us based on our momentary struggles rather than the fullness of who we are. And then finally, emotional vulnerability also requires us to grapple with the vulnerability of our mental health. In a time when mental health has become more openly discussed, it remains an area where many feel hesitant to reveal the full extent of their emotional state. There is still a stigma attached to being emotionally vulnerable, particularly when it comes to struggles such as anxiety, depression, or self-doubt. The discovery is apparent and essential if we are to claim the right to prescribe interventions. And so, more than 50 people have responded to criticizing me. The modern world, with its constant demands for perfection, has created an environment in which many people feel compelled to mask their emotional turmoil, fearing that revealing too much will lead to judgment or rejection. In these moments, the courage to be vulnerable, to admit to ourselves and others that we are struggling, is incredibly powerful, but also incredibly difficult. Instead of trying to surrender, instead of trying to be like grace, slowly and deliberately, at the same time, our willingness to engage with our emotional vulnerability is a double-edged sword. While it can open the door to deeper intimacy, it can also place us at risk of being exposed to emotional harm. The emotions we share are not just fleeting or superficial. They reflect the depths of our psyche and spirit. When others betray this trust, when they use our vulnerability as a weapon or treat it lightly, the damage can be severe. The exposure of our emotional selves must therefore be handled with care, not just by us, but by those with whom we choose to share them. Emotional vulnerability requires both courage and wisdom. The wisdom to know when and how to open up, and the courage to be honest about our emotional needs and experiences. In many ways, writing about my mother's fears about losing her parents is hard for me. There is a certain emotional protection that comes with maintaining boundaries around our vulnerability. To protect your emotional well-being, it is essential to know when and where to withhold, when to retreat inward, and when to draw a line between what you share and what you keep to yourself. The ability to manage our emotional vulnerability does not mean suppressing it or ignoring it. Rather, it means understanding that vulnerability is a tool to be used wisely. When shared with the right people in the right context, it can build trust, deepen relationships, and foster healing. But when misused or exposed recklessly, it can lead to emotional burnout, confusion, and even emotional abuse. Emotional vulnerability is a delicate balance between openness and protection. It is not something to be recklessly discarded or shared with abandon, but rather something to be guarded, protected, and shared strategically. We must honor our vulnerability, recognizing its power to connect us with others, while also acknowledging the need for discretion in a world where emotional transparency can often be misinterpreted, misunderstood, or taken advantage of. By practicing emotional vulnerability with both courage and wisdom, we can find a way to navigate the complexities of our emotional lives in a manner that fosters genuine connection while preserving our emotional integrity. Family and personal relationships are the foundation of our emotional lives, and they are often the most profound and intimate connections we have. These bonds are the sources of love, comfort, support, and sometimes conflict, but they are, by their very nature, deeply personal. They are not meant to be shared casually or turned into spectacles for public consumption. These relationships are sacred, and when we expose them too freely or seek external validation, we risk undermining the very essence of what makes them meaningful. At the core of family and personal relationships lies trust. Trust is not something that can be demanded or expected. It is something that is cultivated over time, nurtured through shared experiences, and guarded with care. When we expose the intricacies of our personal lives to the outside world, we put that trust at risk. The more we make our relationships public, the more we subject them to the opinions, judgments, and scrutiny of others, who may not understand the complexities, nuances, or challenges inherent in those bonds. The sanctity of a family or close friendship is fragile, built upon mutual respect, unconditional love, and shared vulnerability, and it can easily be damaged by outside interference or excessive exposure. It's impossible to keep up this pressure thing that happens whenever we are exposed to enemies. One of the dangers of publicizing our personal relationships is the way it can distort the reality of those relationships. Social media, for example, often presents a curated version of our lives, highlighting moments of happiness, success, and celebration, while glossing over the struggles, conflicts, and uncertainties that everyone faces behind closed doors. This selective exposure creates an artificial narrative, one that can mislead both ourselves and others about the true nature of our relationships. When we make our personal lives the subject of external commentary, we risk losing touch with the authenticity that makes those relationships meaningful. We are no longer engaging in the relationship for its own sake, but rather for the validation it provides from the outside world. Furthermore, there is an intrinsic intimacy in personal relationships that cannot be replicated or understood by outsiders. The complexities of a family dynamic, the unspoken bonds between longtime friends, or the quiet, tender moments shared between partners are not meant to be shared for the purpose of public consumption. These are moments that belong to the individuals involved in the relationship alone. They are private because they reflect the vulnerability, shared history, and emotional investment that cannot be reduced to a tweet or a photo. When these moments are exposed to the wider world, they risk being stripped of their meaning, reduced to symbols or performances, rather than genuine expressions of connection. The publicization of personal relationships also brings the risk of judgment. People outside the relationship may not fully understand the context, the intricacies of the interactions, or the reasons behind decisions made within that relationship. They may offer unsolicited opinions or harsh criticisms, creating unnecessary pressure that can erode the trust and understanding that once existed. And in an age where everyone seems to have an opinion on what a healthy relationship looks like, it's easy to forget that only those directly involved truly understand what is needed for that relationship to thrive. The intrusion of external perspectives can lead to confusion, self-doubt, and even resentment. By keeping personal relationships private, we preserve the space to grow, navigate challenges, and celebrate triumphs on our own terms, without the burden of outside influence. Additionally, the act of sharing intimate details about your relationships with others can sometimes lead to unintended consequences. Relationships are fluid, they evolve, and they go through phases of growth and tension. When we expose these moments prematurely, we risk distorting the narrative or turning fleeting conflicts into permanent markers of the relationship. Moreover, the more we share, the more we might invite others to judge the worth of those relationships based on narrow or superficial metrics. By keeping certain aspects of our relationships private, we allow them the time and space they need to evolve naturally, without the pressure to perform for an external audience. Christian Buddhism is often prepared, possibly in the face of public social